This Spotlight episode of the Boss Rush Podcast is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to support the Boss Rush Network and our family of podcasts, head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/BossRushNetwork. Thanks for your continued support.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Boss Rush Spotlight, a special podcast for you guys to hear about up-and-coming developers or who's been around the block, and also other famous people in the video game industry. Today we got a really special guest here with us tonight. We have been big fans of this company's games, and we're happy to have the founder join us. But before we introduce him, I just need to introduce my co-host this evening, Stephanie. How you doing, Stephanie?
Doing great. I've been looking forward to this for many days, weeks. Also counting down to PAX, so I'm very happy to be here, and looking forward to the conversation.
Well, awesome. So am I. And last but not least, here is our very special guest. Please welcome Kris from Toge Productions here on our podcast. Kris, how are you doing tonight?
Hi, thank you. I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
No, it's more of an honor for us. Seriously, we love your games. They are an inspiration to us. Your games just bring this overwhelming emotion. I thought that A Space for the Unbound had the perfect analogy of depression, and just the overall story really touched me emotionally. I was crying madly at the end. It was just so good and so powerful. It's and Steph, she's a huge fan of Coffee Talk.
I want Barb, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
What was your experiences with Coffee Talk?
Well, first, I want to let the listeners know, those that listen in podcast format, you have to hop onto YouTube and check out the video, because Kris has an amazing background where it's like he's live sitting in the Coffee Talk shop in your fictional Seattle. There's individuals walking in the background. It's raining. Oh my goodness. I want that. And then when I podcast, I want that to be my background. I heard about Coffee Talk from my fellow colleagues here in the Boss Rush community. We have a very healthy community of Nintendo fans, Sony fans, some Microsoft fans, but we also have a large pool of indie fans. And they mentioned Coffee Talk. You have to play this game. Sat through it. I love all the individual characters within them, each with their own dynamic story, and each punctuated with the art of making either a coffee or a tea. And I even got to learn different types of tea recipes that maybe I'm not traditionally used to. And then I started making some in real life, like the ginger and lemon tea. So once I heard another edition of Hibiscus and Butterfly came out, I had to give it a shot. I demoed it at PAX East last year, bought the physical collector's edition version this year, and I feel like Chapter 2 is just a wonderful extension of the first game. I felt like this is Coffee Talk is an example of a game that provides a unique identity for Toge, because I feel that if you want to stand out and be a success, in my opinion, as a gamer, a consumer, if you want to be a successful video game developing studio, need to create a solid identity, and I feel like Coffee Talk does that successfully.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been an amazing journey, and it's making these games is definitely it's there's a lot of what do you call it, obstacles, challenges that we have to face. And being that we are from a developer from Indonesia, we also want to bring that I guess our identity, our perspective and things, and to kind of bring that to the global audience, and bring something fresh. So that's why we make these narrative games, um with a, I guess like with a lot of like nuances of like, different cultures, different perspectives. So hopefully that could bring something fresh to, to the indie game development scene.
Yeah, I noticed that especially in, A Space for the Unbound, because I believe the setting is supposed to be 90s Indonesia. I obviously I did not grow up there, but I can recognize kind of what is different, and it's not the same. But half of my heritage comes from China and then Taiwan. So anytime, just personally, when I see a game that just takes place in maybe a setting that's just not like commonplace, I love it. Another example is the Legend of Tian Ding, which just happens to be a game based off of a folk hero in Taiwan. In that game, every time you pick up a collectible, it explains kind of what the food is or what it is there. So I kind of saw a similar likeness to A Space for the Unbound.
Awesome. I see you got yourself a little one on your side as well. We can hold.
We can all, at least I
Yep.
can relate to that. I'm sure they just want to be kind of part of the show and like, oh, what's Dad doing?
I'm sorry, guys. Could you hold on a minute? Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
not a
Yes,
problem.
go ahead. But yeah, like
Parenting first.
parenting's hard. No, I was just rambling on about kind of how Legend of Tian Ding kind of remind me of not exactly the same, but just kind of you could see the heart and passion uh, that the studio, goes out of its way to kind of show us a world that many of us gamers maybe might not know about.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep.
let's see, I'm trying to think of other examples and experiences. Actually, have you played When the Past Was Around?
I have not. That is on my list, though. That is
Yeah.
also one of their games.
Yep, exactly. Because that's
Hmm.
also on my list as well. And I look at the art style, and I've noticed that Toge, I think
Hmm.
makes a mindful decision with their art style.
I'm back, guys. Sorry, I
Oh,
have two kids, and it's early in the morning, so they were like, "Oh, what are the games and stuff like that." So yeah.
oh,
Oh,
that's totally fine. Steph actually has a little 7-year-old Steph. Is he
he's
7 or 6?
8 now, and
8.
he's turning
Jeez.
9. And, I'm exposing him to the good video games. I know he's
Mhm.
all about that Minecraft, and I kind of cringe, but I'm like, "No, no, no, you need to look at these wonderful games. You don't have any idea how cool of a mom you have." No, I'm just kidding.
No, I was impressed when he started playing Super Mario RPG. I was like, you know what? You're raising that boy right, Steph.
Well, if you don't mind me asking, I don't know if it's too personal a question as a transition, as a clearly as a parent, um, how do you juggle the responsibilities you have overseeing Toge while kind of work-life balance, right?
Mhm.
Let's start there.
Yeah. So, interesting thing is like we've decided to turn our company completely like work from remote, from work from
Hmm.
anywhere. So we do have an office, but it's like I would say like 90% empty, because everybody
Mm,
just, they just work from anywhere. And, that way we give our, employees more time, more freedom to do their thing and like, manage work life balance. Or like sometimes, we don't even have like, what do you call it? Like a 9 to 5 kind of like working
Okay.
hour. So we
Yep.
don't have any like clock in, clock out. So everybody can work anytime they choose, and we just set up like meetings, like scheduled online. And if they agreed on those time, then they have to be there. But
mhm,
then if they want to go back to sleep and then work at night, or like vice versa, it's completely fine. So that way, like I as a parent, I can also play with my kids, and then work, when they're, maybe when they're asleep or when they're at school and stuff like that. So I think it's uh gives you more, what do you call it, like, more freedom, and
Hmm.
yeah,
more
flexibility.
quality time.
Yeah.
Yeah, flexibility, exactly. So that's what we decided to do at Toge. um ever since the pandemic started, and we just decided like everybody, you can go home, work from anywhere, and we just stick with it. And I think like everybody is happy about it, so yeah.
Oh,
No,
nice.
that's awesome. I kind of wish we as Americans weren't so rigid about our 9 to 5. You know, because I think there's something special about that hybrid model and just being able to balance your work life. That by being a happy employee, you're also going to be a productive employee.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know my boss recently kind of said, because I told her I had to get my son, and she says, you know what? As long as you get your work done. I'm not going to be watching you at 8:30 in the morning. Just like, listen, I see your emails. I know you get work
mm,
done, so don't worry about it. So I think I'm glad that that's working out for you because I know that not all businesses have thrived when things kind of shifted. So it's admirable that you guys adapted and ended up seems like it's working out for the better.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I think like one of the privilege of like being in a game industry, it's because it's mostly digital work, so you don't have to go to like a physical location to do something, and
mhm,
everybody can just like there's a lot of like online tools that you can use for collaborative work. So it's very I would say it's very very nice, very flexible. So that's why like we've and one of the reason why we decided to go like remote working was that the traffic in Jakarta is like one of the worst traffic like in the world. So like going from your like your house to the office, it might took like 2 hours, and then going back is like another 2 hours.
Ooh,
So when we decided to like go work from anywhere, so everybody's like, yeah, I don't have to go deal with traffic and go to the office at like 5 a.m. in the morning and stuff like that. So it's I think yeah, I guess that's like one of the benefits of working in a mostly digital and creative industry,
mm,
is that you
hmm
have that kind of like freedom.
that is
nice.
awesome. Like that's probably my least favorite part of the day is just driving to work and back because I'm always hitting rush hour traffic.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, like just to kind of take that and walk it back a little bit, if you don't mind, Chris. So, how did you kind of get into the video game industry? Was it more of your personal passion? Did you have a passion for playing video games growing up? And if so, what were your go-to games?
Yeah, so I've been playing games since I was like, I don't know, maybe 7 years old. Started with like the Nintendo system and playing Mario, Super Mario.
Mhm.
And I've always loved like playing games that have like a interesting world, like
Mm,
this kind of like fantasy, and it takes you to this like a different place, a different world, and then you can experience something that's might not be available in real life, right? So I've been um I've been playing games since I was a kid. And when I was like maybe like in high school, like junior high or something like that, so I started like making like mods or like levels, using level editors like for StarCraft or Warcraft and stuff like that. And then like, oh yeah, like making levels or mods for your own enjoyment turns out to be, oh, it's interesting, it's fun, and then I can create my own kind of like world, I can create my own
mhm,
stories or whatever. So I decided to kind of like, I want to make games.
mhm,
But back then, like, in Indonesia there was like no in game industry at all. So
mhm,
um I was like, I don't exactly know how like to go to get into the game industry. So
mhm,
when I graduated from high school, going to college, like I kind of like think like, if I want to make my own games, I need to learn how to write code. So I decided to take computer science with the intention of like learning to make my own code and make my own games. And during like in uni, I met with other students that have like similar interests, and they actually, oh yeah, they want to make their own games as well. So we kind of like uh like try to collaborate on projects and stuff like that. And then I think it was like very fortunate for me, because like uh back then, like one of the I was like one of the first, what do you call it, like batches of students that the universities
Mm.
opened a new program collaborating with another university in Australia, and they opened this games technology course, and that was like
Wow.
the first one ever in Indonesia. So I was like, yeah, like take that course for like a year, and then you can go like a student exchange for a year in Australia.
Hmm.
And then there I get to learn how to like write actual game development stuff. And after that, like going back from Australia, so I tried to kind of like apply, like working in other like game studios, but unfortunately I couldn't get in. But there was like, I guess, like a couple a couple game development studios in Indonesia that was like they used to make like arcade games, like cabinets and stuff like that. So I interned there for maybe like half a year, and then worked for a bit. And my friend from uni called me one day and then told me like, hey, there's this like game design competition online where you can make your like flash games, and then you can win like $1,000, something like that. And then he asked me like, hey, do you want to make a game with me together and do this competition, like after work? And I was like, oh, okay, maybe like $1,000 was, it's good money. And so we decided to go make something for that competition. But then we missed the deadline because of like time differences, and we didn't check like what actually the time zone was.
Yeah.
Oh
So we
no.
missed the deadline. And we didn't win the competition. But going through that kind of like I guess like the competition with flash games and stuff like that, it kind of like opened our eyes to like, oh, there's this other section of the industry, or like you can make flash games and then you can sell them and then you can make money. So that was like the start of like making Toge. We decided to like resign from our from our work, and then start making flash games in our garage for for a couple of years. And that's how I guess like the company started.
I love that story. That's very, I'm not just saying, that's very inspirational, like to learn that you are essentially are a part of a group, like you said, that pioneered gaming in your country. That's
Hmm.
incredible. And talk about timing too. Wow. To be an exchange student and learn that. And I'm sure there was a lot of uncertainty about, quitting what job you had to kind of work on your own thing, like you said, in your garage. So,
Mhm.
um,
If you don't mind me asking, what was like your first Flash games about? Like, what was like the objective?
Oh my god! Like the first flash game that we made, uh, it's titled Phys Labs, which is short for like physics lab.
Hmm.
So we want to make to like a physics simulation puzzle game, and it was like really really bad. Like it's really bad. And we uploaded that to Newgrounds, I think. And
wow.
I think the rating was like, I don't know, like two out of five or something like that. It's like really bad. But it's like when you start making something for the first time, like you'll probably fail, right? But
Yeah.
Hmm.
going through that process, we learn a lot of like, oh, this is the process of making games, and then like process of like publishing it,
Mm.
making it available for people to play, and to how how do you earn money or like monetize it and stuff like that. So that is a really really good learning experience for us. And then after that first game, we like we learn what works and what doesn't, and try to
Mhm.
improve. And the second game that we made was it's called Days to Die, which is like a side-scrolling zombie shooter game.
Hmm.
It performed like a lot better, and that was like, I guess like the moment where we decided like, okay, I think we can do this full time.
I think that's a better barometer or measurement of success
Hmm.
is if you're able to kind of take lessons learned from your initial projects and improve upon them. Um,
Mhm.
if you don't mind me asking, now that we're kind of talking about how you guys started Toge, uh, how did you come up with the name and the logo? Because anyone that's self-employed, if you're making your own developing studio, if you're publishing your own book or anything, to come up with an image that is iconically you and your group, I would find that very intimidating.
It's like funny story that the name Toge. So it means bean sprout in Indonesia,
Mm.
Mhm.
and one of the reason why we name our company Toge, it wasn't because like there's like this deep philosophical thing, but it was because like when we were like studying in Australia, so there's like this group of like four Indonesian students, and then we were like doing our like final year project there, and then they you have to name your group, right? So we were like, we should come up with a name that's very Indonesian to represent like our, like uh, where we came from, but also sounds very exotic and unique, So we thought like,
Mm.
oh, maybe this and that, and it was like, so toge is like a slang, like it's a like a joke in Indonesia. It means like like either like what do you call it? Like yeah, it's like it's just like a funny joke, and
Mhm.
we just decided like okay, just name it Toge, and then because it's like I guess it's like a unique word, and Toge actually have like multiple meanings in different languages. So in Japanese, Toge actually means thorn, like
Hmm.
Oh, okay.
togepi or something. It's like a thorn. So it has like that multiple meaning. So we kind of like we like that because like somebody from Japanese might think it's this, but somebody else might think it's a
Yeah.
different thing. And because it's nobody knows how to pronounce it, so it's also it's funny for us as well because like some people might they might struggle to pronounce it. So for us back then, it was like, yeah, that's funny, right?
Mhm.
Um, so
Insider.
when we when we graduated from uni, came back to Indonesia, and then started making games, and then like, okay, what should we call our company? And we
Mm.
was like, just call us Toge. And then, like it was a joke, and then it just it stuck.
It's stuck.
Now it's stuck. so
It,
Well,
so
you
we
planted the
it
bean and it started to sprout.
Well, it makes sense
yeah.
now because when I look at your logo, I'm like, "Oh, I see. It's a bean sprout. It's so cute.
Yeah.
I love it."
Hmm.
And like after we name our company, after we release a couple of games, and then we started thinking like, if we call, if we're stuck with this name, we should come up with something philosophical and deep, meaning, so that when people ask like what is the meaning of Toge, we can come up with something, a cool answer that's like, well, inspiring. So we were like, so what does Toge mean, and what does Toge represent? And then we thought like, okay, bean sprouts are like they're small, right? Like, and then you can plant seeds or like beans or whatever, and then you put it on cotton, and then you give them like water, and then it will sprout, right? So we thought like, so maybe that means like something great can come up, can come from something that's small. So it means like you should start simple, start small, and then you can grow. And then we thought like, okay, bean sprouts are also, they can adapt to different environments, so it means like you
Hmm.
have to be able to adapt. And like great success comes from something that's small, so that becomes like our philosophy, I guess. um
Hey, that
and yeah,
fits.
it's
Yeah.
kind of profound. So
No, I really
it's,
like
yeah,
that
something that
adaptability.
started from a joke
Yeah.
becomes
But I
something
still
that's
like the origin story, though. That's a
Yeah.
great story.
We're just gonna mess with people.
yeah.
That's awesome. So, you've had this time. You kind of grew your company. How big is your company right now? Like on average, how many employees do you have?
So we started with just like two people, myself and a friend,
Hmm.
and then now we have, I think, 52 people.
Wow.
And spread across three different locations. So our main office is in Tangerang, which is like just outside of Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, and the two other studios is in Kediri, which is like a small town famous for tofu and cigarettes.
Mhm.
And
Oh.
then the other one is Mojiken Studio, which is in Surabaya, which we just like recently
Oh.
acquired. So
Hmm.
we merged together. So yeah, we're like 50 people now spread across like three different locations. But like our employees is actually they're actually spread across Indonesia. So some of them are in Borneo, Kalimantan, or like some of them are like in Sumatra, which is like completely different
Wow.
islands. Mm.
Hmm.
I,
Well, that's cool, and that's also another advantage of the whole hybrid network is that you can literally be on opposite sides of the islands and still be able to make your games. So, like,
yeah.
where do you see you guys in like the next 5 or 10 years? Like, do you see yourselves continuing to acquire other South Asian companies,
Mm.
or
So so I guess like we want we just want to make like keep making games and
Mhm.
bring interesting stories or gameplay mechanics to to the world. And like so one of the reasons why we uh started like our, I guess, like publishing division and then started acquiring other studios was that because back in like 2015, 2014, like the flash game market was dying, right? So because we started, like a lot of Indonesian developers started as flash game developers. And because like in 2012, Apple decided not to support flash in their mobile phones. And it just like it started tanking. And a lot of Indonesian studios were like they were like struggling to survive, and then they pivoted to like making mobile games and other other platforms. But it's much harder, and a lot of them couldn't they couldn't sustain themselves, and then they started closing down studios. So in 2015 we decided to like, okay, how can we help other Indonesian developers? So we started with like trying to do like collaborative projects, and then we would uh, find like either like clients, or like we self-funded the projects. And we would give them like marketing support, like game design consultation and stuff like that. And then we realized like what we've been doing is like it's like a publisher. So why not become a publisher ourselves and publish in these games to Steam and stuff like that. So we started doing that, publishing in like 2017. And then the studios that we feel like, oh, we work really well together. And why not why not join forces, and then
Mm.
we could make a lot a lot better. And that's how we merged and acquired Tahu Games, which is from Kediri. And then recently Mojiken Studio, the creator of Space for the Unbound, in our team as well. But we never intend to kind of like acquire studios. It just happens, like, I guess, organically, naturally, and we feel like like this is a very good team to work together. And we decided like, oh, I guess it makes sense. Why not? Why not do it? But like we want more Indonesian studios to thrive, and like to find their own success. So we try to we try as much to kind of like share our knowledge and provide with mentorship and stuff like that. So hopefully we could spread the seed of smaller indie companies, and then they
Yeah.
would create new interesting games.
Yeah, it seems like your philosophy is a lot more, like you said, collaborative and supportive, which is not usually the words you hear when we're talking about companies kind of merging or acquiring. Like here, it's more like, hey, let's lean on each other, let's lend each other our strengths, our creativity, and you know, be
Mhm.
sustainable.
Mhm. Yeah, and it actually, like one of the what do you call it, like one of the reasons like why that happens in Indonesia more collaboratively is because like in Indonesia there's no like big AAA companies. So
Mm,
when somebody, let's say, they fresh graduates, from uni or something like that, and then they want to join the game industry, there's no way there's no place where they can apply for jobs, because like the number of like company in Indonesia, especially in games, they're like so small. So everybody just like, okay, just make our own games, like, and then they become indie developers. So the Indonesian game industry started as indie developers, and um, so everybody, because they're everybody are indie, so they feel like, if we want to survive, we should survive together. And then
yep.
everybody starts sharing their success stories, like lessons learned and stuff like that in our like community forums. And that's how like the I guess like the collaborative culture started. And that's, like that's how Indonesia game, I guess like the game scene have always been. And that's why like we feel like it's very very collaborative, because everybody feels like, it doesn't make sense to compete, right? Because everybody are just like small studios anyway.
Mhm.
Mm, mhm,
That's so how what do you see like how do you see the South Asian market kind of expanding?
Hmm.
Do you see it being able to compete against some of the other markets, like maybe start bleeding into like China or like Japan or like how do you see it like growing, I guess?
Hmm. I guess like, like Southeast Asia, I guess like a lot of the region, like the
mhm,
Asian region, they're untapped markets. For example, like Indonesia is right now is like one of the biggest, I guess, game markets in Southeast Asia.
Hmm.
Uh, and but it's like mostly it's dominated with mobile games. So one of the challenges for game developers, like Indonesian game developers, are that we cannot make free to play games, right? Because we are indie, so the budgets are small, so we cannot make or compete with those big mobile titles, I guess.
Hmm.
So the developers are always looking into like international market, because they, I guess like the route where they can sell the games that they make are not local market. But it is growing, like the Indonesian, and like I guess like in overall, like the Asian market are growing in terms of
mhm,
like numbers of gamers, number of like consumption in games. So there's a lot of potential there. But there's also some challenges, to kind of like educate the market, and then kind of like build awareness about other games, games other than like just like the free to play games. um because like for the, I guess like the South and Southeast Asia market, um we don't have like a lot of like spending power, right? So
Hmm.
a lot of people, if they, if you offer them like, do you want to download a free game, or do you want to pay like $20 for a game, they would
mm,
choose the free game. So that's why like free to play games are the kings in these regions. But there's also like kind of like a slow shift of like trend of like people starting to buy premium games on Steam, because like at first they played Dota for free on Steam, and then like, oh, what are these games, and then like, they start buying those games.
mm,
So and then they started learning of like, oh, there, games are not all free to play and gacha, and then with ads. So you can actually play a full experience story driven game with no interruptions and no additional payment. And then they were like, oh, I didn't know these games exist. So they're like that kind of like trend shifting. And then there's like a growing, I guess, like a growing market started to buy premium game as well. But it's still small. Maybe it will take some time to go there,
Yeah.
but it is growing.
Do you feel like a lot of your traffic is driven through Steam or through consoles? Because I know it depends on where in the world. Some countries are more console heavy, some are more handheld heavy, some is just Steam because almost
Mm.
everything's on Steam, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely Steam for like
Mm,
Southeast Asia, because a lot of people couldn't afford buying consoles, the hardware, right? But if they they have to buy a laptop or a computer for work
yeah,
anyway, so usually it's through Steam.
that makes sense.
Yep. Okay. So, you said like one of the approaches that you guys are going for is to appeal to the international market. Is there a market in particular that you're aiming at? Is it like the USA, trying to market the current indie, like I guess, obsession right now that people are being driven to?
Hmm. So like there's like no like specific. Yeah, I guess like like
Hmm.
US would be one of the largest game markets, right? So we try to kind of like um I would say release our game, like aim to the first one is like the English speaking market, because like
Hmm.
that is like one of the largest, like just have our games in English, then you can have like most of the world's
A lot of
population.
countries, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And then the second one, we try to go to like also Chinese market, like
Hmm.
so we localize our games to traditional Chinese, and then also simplified Chinese,
All right,
because
nice.
because China is also like one of the largest markets in the world right now. So we try to get like the largest markets first,
Hmm.
Hmm.
because by doing that, you have more chance to get purchase,
Right.
like visibility. And then we just like kind of like go through the, I guess, the world's population. Like the next one would be maybe Spanish speaking countries, and then maybe like what else, like France, Germany, and go and so on and so on. So we try to kind of like get, I guess, like get the biggest bang for our buck, because like
Cast the
our
Hmm.
widest
budgets are
net.
limited. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Well, which makes sense because you got to think smart in a sense that cast the widest net, then be able to generate the funds needed to continue to provide translations for others. Because ultimately, we want
Yeah,
everyone to be able to have the experience, but you know, got to be
yeah, true.
strategic about it.
Yeah, you have to be strategic, because like like translating a game with like 50,000 words and stuff, like it's
Oh,
not, it's very expensive. It could get very expensive. Yeah.
well, especially since you mentioned Chinese, you mentioned traditional and simplify. So you're doing kind of two for one because growing up, even though the characters are similar, it's still different. Um, so I was surprised to know that, look, there's still, I guess, a call for traditional
Hmm.
characters in video games. So,
Now,
Yeah,
with
so because like there are like some countries that are still using the traditional Chinese,
mm,
so because like when you're translating, like not translating, localizing to these languages, sometimes it's like we could do both at the same time, with like a discount. So why not, right? So
okay,
yeah.
got it.
so have you noticed with the recent success of A Space for the Unbound winning multiple like best indie emotional impact awards, like has that like helped, like how much has that helped your company's exposure, would you say?
Yeah, I guess like we with like with Space for the Unbound getting nominated in the Games Award, that was like, I guess like a moment where like Indonesian like gamers are like they feel very proud of like, oh yeah, there's
Mhm.
this, Indonesian games that made it internationally. And like a lot of I guess like a lot of Indonesian gamers and the media talked about it, so we gain a lot of exposure through that. And then
Mhm.
we like, because like a lot of Indonesian doesn't even know that they're Indonesian game developers. So
Mhm.
by
There you go.
having that
Yeah.
kind of like go into the like the mainstream news and stuff like that in Indonesia, that kind of like build awareness that hey, Indonesia,
Yeah.
we also have a game industry, we also have like these developers that are making games, and these games
Awareness
are,
and
Mhm.
something to be
yeah,
proud of, right? Very
exactly, yeah.
proud of.
Mhm.
Nice. Well, and also I may not be at the same level as the Game Awards, but just so you know, Chris, that we have the Bossies, which is like the Game Awards, but for Boss Rush Media. And Space for the Unbound was nominated for Best Direction and Storytelling, Biggest Impact, and Indie Game of the Year. And the Coffee Talk Episode 2, Hibiscus and Butterfly, actually won our Best Feel Good Game. So, yeah, just
Yay,
wanted to
thank you,
share
thank you
that.
so much for the awards.
Yep. Well, so going back to the exposure in in Indonesia, you just recently celebrated your 15th anniversary. And with it, you brought about an announcement of a Toge initiative
Mhm.
to help get smaller developers the funds as well as the resources they need. Can you tell us a little bit about the Toge initiative?
Yeah, so we call it Toge Game Fund Initiative.
Hmm.
So just because like we started our the company as like flash game developers, and during the flash game era, one of the advantages of that is like you can make games really like crappy and then fail, but like failure doesn't really bankrupt your studio, right? Because
Hmm.
making flash games are like relatively cheap, and then you can get funded through like sponsorships from like the flash game portals. Sadly, because like there are no longer this kind of like sponsorship model existing because flash died.
Hmm.
So a lot of like indie developers are like fresh graduated, or like new indie studios that just start up. They don't have this like safety net to kind of like experiment and then fail,
Mhm.
because I think like having going through like failure multiple time is actually very very good, or
Yeah.
even necessary sometimes to kind of like sharpen your skills, like build your build your knowledge and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So sadly the model no longer there, so we thought like, how can we kind of like replicate this kind of like safety net? So we decided to open a new like a grant funding model through this like Toge Game Fund initiative, so that new studios or like new indie developers can pitch their game concepts, and then we can give them up to $10,000 in grant funding, and it's okay if they fail, right? So that they don't have to bankrupt themselves making their game. So we wanted to provide that kind of like safety net, and then
Mhm.
if they make something interesting, then maybe we could also offer them a publishing deal. But if not, then it's okay, they can they can pitch to other publishers, or they can self publish, and make another game.
Oh, that's
Nice.
an
Yeah.
excellent opportunity, especially like because of how costs are booming. Like it it definitely helps out those smaller developers kind of get their feet wet, and then like you said, if it's good, you might even offer that publishing right to them.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah, we just want to like because we feel like there's a lot of potential talents, or like potential, what do you call it, like raw potential in Southeast
Yeah.
Asia, and especially these regions where the like a lot of people are they're underprivileged, right? So they don't have the
Hmm.
funding, they don't have the access to kind of like network or technology and stuff like that. So we feel like Toge, we are at that position where we have the resources, we have the, we have the power, I guess, to kind of like use. So we want to use that privilege, I guess, to help other
Hmm.
developers. So we want to see more, people to, if they have like a pretty cool game idea or like concept, they could realize that, and then I guess like, bring that like show their full potential, and then hopefully they can grow, from there.
Right.
Because we started like that, right?
Hmm.
Toge
Hmm.
started with just like two guys in a garage, and we know how the feeling, like nobody wanted to kind of like give you a chance. So we thought like, hey, if we can have the resources to help other people, to give them a chance to do something, we should do it.
Right. I kind of what kind of struck me was when you first mentioned safety net, because what it ultimately is, unfortunately, there's very little room for error, so to speak,
Mhm.
where someone is lucky just to get one chance, let alone a second one after maybe not doing, and who really excels on the very first try. So it's almost like many of us, especially those that just don't have the privilege of having a huge bank account,
Yeah,
um, they're set up for failure in the beginning. So it's a really nice initiative. I hope we can help spread the word.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, and I hope it definitely unearths some mighty fine talent in the Indonesian
Yeah,
market.
Mhm.
foster some great creativity. We want to see more.
Hmm. Oh yeah, we
Yeah,
need more games like Coffee Talk and The Space for the Unbound uh,
Mhm.
in our lives.
yeah, yeah. Hopefully, hopefully we can bring more, um, from Indonesia, and fresh ideas, fresh perspectives, and that's, we feel like that could be, by doing this, we could get something that's, fresh and new. Uh,
All right.
Nice.
Well, our time is about running out here, but we do want to ask if there's anything that you're currently playing right now.
hmm. I I well, I guess like the last game that I've played is like Classified France 44, which is like a turn-based tactics, kind of like XCOM like, but set in
Okay.
like World War II. Because I
Okay.
love, turn-based tactics games, and uh, like I'm also working on a turn-based tactics, so like I need to learn, I guess, like get a
Mm,
lot of inspiration from other games. So yeah, so that is
Mhm.
like the last game that I've played.
that
Uh,
sounds like pretty fun homework. I don't know about you, Pat.
Yeah.
oh, that. You know what? If I could just make a living just playing video games, I would be a very happy person. But
Well,
yeah.
other than your team's presence at PAX, which we will definitely be there and try out some of the newer games that will be shown
Mhm.
off there, as well as existing games. Where would you kind of want to shout out so where our listeners and viewers can check out Toge Productions and where to get the latest news and updates from your team?
Okay, so you can follow us on like social media. Our handle is at Toge Productions, Toge
Mhm.
Productions.
Yep.
And you can also go to like our Steam page,
Hmm.
the publisher page, or just find our games there, and you can find the publisher page. And we'll be bringing like not only like existing games like Space for the Unbound and Coffee Talk to PAX, but we have, I think, two new game
Hmm.
titles that are um, going to be shown there, which is like the first one is Creeks Run Tactics, and then the other
Hmm.
one is Whisper Mountain Outbreak. Um, Creeks Run Tactics is like a turn-based tactics with mechs set in like Southeast Asia during the Cold War era.
Hmm.
So that could be interesting if you like turn-based tactics. And Whisper Mountain Outbreak is like kind of a top-down zombie survival horror game. So the idea was we want to kind of like bring the Resident Evil Outbreak experience but with a 2.5D pixel art perspective, and the focus would be more into like the collaborative puzzle solving, um, but with also with surviving the whole zombie hordes and stuff like that. So that would be our first like like real time multiplayer game that we work. So that's yeah, pretty interesting for us as well, because we never made like real time multiplayer games before. So this is
Hmm.
could be something interesting.
No, I've checked out both of them, and they look really fun. I can't wait to actually try them out at PAX, especially the Creeks Front. I get heavy Front Mission vibes
Yeah,
from that game,
yeah,
and Front Mission was definitely a really fun game. So
yeah. We were like inspired from Front Mission, and we feel like there's Front Mission like kind of like disappeared, I guess, like, and so
mhm.
we decided to like make our own uh you know mech tactics inspired by Front Mission, but with modernized gameplay mechanics and Southeast Asian Cold War era conflict setting. Yeah.
Mhm. No, I
Great setting.
I remember you brought up on your Twitter X on a Twitter at X post that you decided not to let randomness affect your gameplay, especially when it comes to bullets, because that was one thing I hated about Front Missions. You could have like a 95% chance of hitting something and still miss, and that seemed
Yeah.
to happen way too often.
Yes, like yeah, like playing XCOM or Front Mission, all the turn-based tactics game with like hit chance probability. It's just like sometimes it feels like really annoying when you're like standing next to an enemy, and then 99%, and then you miss. Like it was like, oh, what the hell? So we decided, like, for Creek's Front, we decided to like, we're not gonna use hit chance probability, and we're just gonna use like projectile system. So it's kind of like like I guess like a shooter game where wherever the bullet hits, it hits. So that way, you won't have like that kind of like 99% chance and then it misses. So like
Mhm.
wherever your bullet lands, that's the damage.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, everyone, give those games a check. You can find them on Steam. Currently, wish list them, please. Uh,
Yes.
Kris, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We definitely had a lot of fun here. This was really informative, learning about the Indonesian market and just like how it's grown exponentially over the last few years.
Right, and we would be so happy to continue to see you grow. Pat and I definitely are the loud cheerleaders here at Boss Rush Media for your company. So,
Hmm.
we wish you luck in your future endeavors. We'll be in touch with your team. Looking forward to playing your games. And
Hmm.
thank you for your time. And thank you for your kids' patience.
Hmm.
Thank
All
you,
right.
thank you so much for having me.
Yep.
And yeah, sorry about the kids, but yeah,
No,
that happens.
we love having the kids on the show. Like it
Oh,
happens all the time with Steph and
yeah, my son
sometimes
pops up
Corey.
in the background most of the time.
Hmm. Yeah. Anyways, thank you all for listening to this Spotlight edition. I hope that you were able to take a lot in, just like Steph and I were. And we look forward to hearing from you guys again. Remember, this is the Boss Rush Media signing out and saying, be better.
Good night.
Night.
If you want to see how you can become a Patreon producer, head on over to patreon.com/BossRushNetwork. The Patreon producers for this month are Adriel Munger, Austin Campbell, Celeste Roberts, Christian S., Sana Dierig, Francisco Santillan, Matthew Keel, and Todd Oxtra. Thanks for your continued support of the Boss Rush Network.